The Anunnaki Connection, full documentary. Did they create us? Are they still among us? There are truths older than time itself, buried deep beneath the weight of empires, erased by the hands of those afraid of what we might discover. But the past never stays silent. Whispers echo through the cracks of forgotten temples, in the pages of forbidden texts, and in the double helix of our DNA. For thousands of years, the world's oldest sacred stories have talked about them. The Watchers, the serpents of wisdom, the fallen. The Samaritans called them the Anunnaki, the ones who came down from the sky to earth. They weren't gods, not demons, not just legends. They were something else. Their symbols carry the winged disc, the coiled serpent, the sacred tree. But who were they? Were they human engineers, celestial travelers, or a prophecy about a fate we're just beginning to understand? From the ruins of Babylon to the lost city of Atlantis, their fingerprints are everywhere, even in the teachings of Jesus, the wisdom of Buddha, and ancient prophecies. Could all these revelations be pointing to the same cosmic truth? Now, with the skies darkening and the stars realigning, a question arises. Why are echoes from the ages returning? This isn't just an old story. It's a warning, a revelation, and the key to discovering who we really are and what we're meant to become. The Anunnaki connection is real, and it's time to uncover it. They tell us the Bible is the oldest record of divine history, its stories sacred and untouched by outside hands. But what if I told you that long before the Bible was written, the gods warned against what were called false idols in the ancient world? These idols weren't just false, they were part of a much older story, one that started in Sumer, the cradle of civilization, where gods walked among humans and shaped humanity's destiny. Because what's hidden in the Bible's pages, buried beneath centuries of translation, reinterpretation, and censorship, are traces of something much older, the Anunnaki.
Many names of cities and places appear in the ancient myths of the Israelites: Babylon, Akkad, Assyria, Nineveh, and Sumer. These ancient names are rich in history, but the versions in the King James Bible are translations filtered through layers of Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, and Latin. If we trace them back to their original forms, we find something amazing in Hebrew. These cities were known as Babylon, Akkad, Nineveh, and Eridu. In Akkadian, they were called Babalu, Akkad, Ninua, and Eridu. In Sumerian, the oldest written language, they were Babar, Uri, Ninua, and Edu. These weren't just cities. They were the property of gods. Each Mesopotamian city had a ruling god, a divine authority at its head. Eridu belonged to Enki, Babylon to Marduk, Uruk to Inanna, Akkad to Ishtar, Anum, Nineveh to Ishar, to Nana, and Sippar to Utu, the sun god. These gods weren't just mythical figures. They were the Anunnaki, the ruling gods of ancient Sumer. If these gods ruled Mesopotamian cities, it makes sense their influence appears in Hebrew scriptures. After all, the Israelites spent centuries under Mesopotamian influence, from their Babylonian exile to wars with Assyria. So, do we find these old gods in the Bible?
The answer is yes. Bel, a Babylonian title for Marduk, is mentioned multiple times. Isaiah mocks him. Bel bows before Nebo, whose idols sat on beasts and cattle, as described in Isaiah 46 verse 1. Jeremiah predicts his fall, saying, "I will punish Bel in Babylon, and I will take from his mouth what he swallowed," as stated in Jeremiah 51 verse 44.
In the book of Daniel, there's the story of the bell and the dragon, where the prophet Daniel exposes the fraud of Babylonian priests. The goddess of love and war, known as Ashtoreth, is chased by Solomon in 1 Kings 11 verse 5. Her influence lasted for centuries, feared and condemned by Hebrew prophets.
The mighty war god might appear as the Nisroch in 2 Kings 19 verse 37, where the Assyrian king is assassinated while worshipping in the temple of Nisroch, his god. Could this refer to the temple of Nergal in Kalhu? The war and plague gods, Nergal and Cutha, are explicitly mentioned in 2 Kings 17 verse 30.
What about Shamash and Sin, the sun and moon gods? Their worship is condemned throughout the Old Testament. They abandoned the Lord's commandments and made cast images, calves, and gardens, worshipping all the host of heaven. As noted in 2 Kings 17, verse 16, the host of heaven were the gods of Mesopotamia.
To the Hebrew scribes, the Anunnaki became false gods. Many of these once powerful, revered gods were recast by the biblical authors as demons, idols, or absorbed into the character of Yahweh himself. The strict authoritarian ruler of the Anunnaki was a god of storms, law, and divine wrath. One Hebrew name for this god, El Shaddai, is sometimes translated as God Almighty, but older translations mean Lord of the Mountain, Enlil.
He was literally a mountain god, ruling from his sacred peak in Nippur. Both Yahweh and Enlil were described as shining unbearable light, so intense that neither humans nor other gods could look directly at their faces. They caused a catastrophic flood in the Hebrew story. Yahweh told Noah to build an ark. In the Sumerian version, Enlil wanted to wipe out humanity, but only spared one family thanks to Enki's intervention. Different names, same event.
Both also played direct roles in destroying the Tower of Babel in Genesis. Yahweh scattered humanity and confused their languages in Mesopotamian texts. Enlil did the same. He tore down ancient ziggurats and divided humanity. The message was clear. Humans were never meant to rise beyond their station.
Flood, Babylon's destruction, exile from paradise. These stories echo something even older. The idea that humanity is repeatedly reset, that every time we start rising spiritually, something happens. A war, a disaster, a great forgetting. The Samaritans believed this happened at least 5 times. Whenever Enlil saw humanity gaining knowledge, he would step in to bring the world back to its knees.
The pattern is always the same: disaster, division, control. The Hebrew god destroys cities, floods the world, commands genocide, and keeps his people in constant conflict. Time after time, humanity is exhausted, progress halted. Enki, the god of wisdom, ruled the deep waters, the abyss called the Abzu. He was cunning, a giver of forbidden knowledge, a snake-like figure in many myths, and the inspiration for the serpent in Eden.
The deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. The Bible didn't appear in isolation from civilizations before it, like Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria. It likely preserved parts of the Anunnaki story hidden in plain sight. The name Babylon barely gets a mention in mainstream history, yet for the ancient Sumerians, it wasn't just a city, it was the first city where civilization itself began, according to archaeology.
Eridu was founded around 5400 BCE, even before the greatest Mesopotamian cities. But the Samaritans didn't credit humans for building it. They said the gods did, especially one god, Enki, lord of the Absu and keeper of divine knowledge. According to the Sumerian king list, Eridu is the first recorded ownership on earth. The text is clear: kingship came down from heaven and was established in Eridu.
This wasn't just poetic myth. It was a statement of fact. A belief that the first rulers of Earth were not human, but something else. Something older, the Anunnaki. But why? Why was humanity's first city, our first step towards civilization, built in a barren land, far from fertile areas? Maybe because it wasn't meant for humans.
Buried under layers of history, archaeologists uncovered something amazing. One of the oldest temples ever found, the temple of the Zoo Garden of Ub at its heart. Its ruins reveal something strange. Unlike normal cities that expand outward, the temple of Eridu was rebuilt again and again, layer upon layer, as if every new ruler tried to preserve something sacred or forgotten.
Was this where Enki's followers kept their secret knowledge? Or was it something even older? Mesopotamian texts describe the Abzu as an underground watery realm, the home of Enki. But if that's just a myth, why did people rebuild the temple over and over in the exact same spot for thousands of years? What were they protecting, or trying to keep buried?
Genesis talks about Eden as the place where humanity was created, where divine beings walked among humans. But Eden wasn't a paradise, it was a place of control. The Bible describes Eden as having a river that splits into 4, one of which is the Euphrates, leading straight to Sumer's lands. The Sumerians tell a similar story, where the city of Eden was built on the edge of the Abzu, where divine waters met the mortal world.
Eden wasn't a garden, it was a boundary, a containment zone where the first humans were placed under the watchful eyes of the gods. Then came the fall, a break in the system, a rebellion against divine control. The Bible says that after Adam and Eve disobeyed, they were expelled from Eden and left to wander the world.
Sumerian texts tell a similarly chilling tale. Humanity was once granted a kind of servant class under the Anunnaki's rule, along with forbidden knowledge. Both stories have a serpent, a wise being who intervened to give humans the means to evolve. In Genesis, that serpent, he's called a trickster, but in Sumerian myths, he's seen as Enki.
Over time, Eridu started to decline, and by the time of the later Sumerian dynasties, its great temples were abandoned. It became a sacred ruin. So why do the texts say the Anunnaki left the world and stepped back from direct rule? The last recorded kings of Eridu were humans, but the city itself was built on something way older.
If Eridu really was the first city of the gods, does that mean it was also the first place they left behind? Or is there something still buried under the ruins, waiting to be uncovered? The first city, the first gods, the first mystery.
In Exodus 32, verses 1-8, Moses climbs the mountain and disappears into a storm for 40 days and 40 nights. While he's gone, the Israelites get restless and lost without a leader, so they turn to something older, something familiar. Before the golden calf, they said, "Make us gods who will go before us, because we don't know what happened to Moses."
So Aaron, Moses' brother, made a golden calf, shiny and bright, and when it was raised up, the people declared it their God who brought them out of Egypt. But why a calf, and why not a statue of Yahweh, Moses' God? Because the calf wasn't Yahweh.
In Mesopotamia, the bull symbolized divine kingship, power, and creation. It was always linked to the ancient gods. Enlil, the storm god, was often shown wearing a horned bull crown. Marduk, Babylon's chief god, was called the bull. Shamash and Enki, gods of knowledge, were linked to the Taurus constellation.
These ancestors worshipped Mesopotamian gods, the Sumerian Anunnaki. But Moses didn't allow that. He smashed the tablets and burned the idol until it turned to dust, then forced the people to drink its ashes. Then he ordered 3,000 men to be killed.
Why such rage if the calf was just a false god? Because this wasn't just idol worship. It was a threat to Yahweh's rule. Moses knew what it meant. The people weren't just worshiping a statue, they were remembering the gods who came before. Yahweh aimed to wipe out the gods of their ancestors.
The Anunnaki were the golden calf, a false god or a leftover trace of a forbidden past. The word God isn't a name, it's a description in ancient texts. God was a title describing something, not someone. When it comes to the Anunnaki, that difference is crucial. The Bible talks about the sons of God, but who were they? Many claim the Anunnaki were fallen angels, cast out of heaven for rebellion. But ancient records say otherwise.
The fallen ones weren't angels. They were rulers, regular gods overseeing Earth's management, but some, called the Watchers, abandoned their posts and broke divine law. In Genesis chapter 6, verses 2-4, it says the sons of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful, and took wives from whoever they chose.
There were giants on earth then, and even later, when the sons of God had children with human women, their offspring were mighty. These famous men of old, the sons of God, were the Anunnaki Watchers who left their posts and came to earth to have children with human women.
Their offspring were known as the Nephilim, powerful kings, warriors, and hunters. They were remembered as legendary figures in ancient times. The Nephilim weren't just myths. They reappear in Numbers 13, verse 33, where the Israelites describe facing giants in Canaan, saying, "There we saw the Nephilim, and we seemed like grasshoppers in their eyes, and they seemed like grasshoppers in ours."
The word Anak, from which the Anakim got their name, is related to Anunnaki. The Anakim were descendants of the Watchers, known for their towering height and great strength. They're mentioned again in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 28, where the Israelites describe them as a powerful and terrifying race.
Shall we go up? Our brothers have discouraged us, saying the people are greater and taller than us. The cities are great and fortified to the sky, and moreover, we saw the Anakim there. The Bible doesn't deny their existence. It acknowledges them. The Nephilim and the Anakim, powerful kings and hunters from ancient traditions, all trace back to the Anunnaki Watchers.
So what happened to them? The Bible talks about giants, huge, strong beings who once walked the earth. They were the last kings of Bashan. In Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11, there's a strange detail. The bed of the last king of Bashan, a remnant of the giants, was an iron bed not made of wood.
The length of the Ammonites was 9 cubits, and the width was 4 cubits. That's a cubit being about a man's forearm, so 9 cubits equals about 13 feet. If his bed was made to scale, it could have been 10 to 12 tons heavy. A real giant.
But Og was more than just a giant. He was a king. His kingdom, Bashan, stretched across the lands east of the Jordan River. According to the Bible, he was one of the last of a race called the Rephaim, a term often linked to giants.
These giants, as we've seen, were descendants of the Watchers, fallen Anunnaki who took human women and had hybrid kids. Was Og one of their descendants, or was his kingdom even older? The name Rephaim means spirits of the dead, and they're closely connected to the giants, the sons of the gods.
Why was Bashan full of huge ancient stone monuments? It was a hugely important place in the ancient world, and even today in the Golan Heights there's a mysterious rock structure called Gilgal Rephaim, or the Wheel of the Giants. It's a massive stone monument weighing about 20,000 tons, made from over 42,000 huge basalt stones, arranged in 5 concentric rings around a central burial chamber, a tomb.
Was this their final resting place? Or was it something way older? An Anunnaki fortress later ruled by their hybrids. The descendants of the Rephaim don't just show up in the Bible, but also in Ugaritic and Canaanite texts. There they're described as mighty warriors, spirits, ancient rulers who came from the stars.
What if the Rephaim were the remnants of something pre-flood? What if they weren't just legends, but the last survivors of an Anunnaki civilization, one that Yahweh wanted to wipe out? The Bible doesn't describe the Rephaim as normal people. It treats them as something different, something to be feared.
When the Israelites explored Canaan, they said, "We saw the giants, the sons of Anak who came from the giants. We seemed like grasshoppers to them, and they seemed like grasshoppers to us." Numbers 13, verse 33.
Every encounter between Israel and the Rephaim, whether Anakim, Zamzumim, or Emim, ended the same way, with their destruction. The Old Testament repeatedly says Yahweh commanded the total destruction of these tribes. But why was Yahweh so determined to wipe out the last giants?
The Bible says that after the flood the nations were divided, but it doesn't say why or by whom. In Deuteronomy 32 verse 8, an often overlooked and ancient verse, there's a mysterious line. When the Most High divided the nations, he set their boundaries according to the number of the sons of God.
Sons of God. But that's not how most modern translations put it. The phrase sons of God was deliberately changed to sons of Israel, hiding something much older. A memory of a time when the earth was divided among the gods themselves.
This isn't just a biblical idea. In ancient Mesopotamian texts, we see the same story. The Anunnaki ruled the earth, and when humanity was created, the gods divided the world among themselves. What if the biblical story of the 70 nations isn't about human rulers at all, but about the Anunnaki rulers in Mesopotamian myths?
The Anunnaki were each given specific territories to rule. Each god had a domain, ruling cities, lands, and entire civilizations. Enlil ruled Mesopotamia. Enki controlled the Abzu, the deep waters. Later, the western lands came under Babylon. Nannar, Sin, was the moon god linked to the city of Ur. Inanna ruled Uruk and expanded her influence.
This is reflected in the biblical table of nations in Genesis 10, where the world is divided among Noah's descendants. But the names bear a striking resemblance to ancient Mesopotamian regions. Was this division of nations originally a reflection of the Anunnaki power structure? Was each nation ruled by a divine Anunnaki governor overseeing human affairs?
The Old Testament acknowledges the existence of many gods alongside Yahweh. Psalm 82 verse 1 says, "God stands in the divine assembly. He judges among the gods. There's a divine council, a group of gods overseeing human affairs." But over time, Yahweh declared himself the supreme God, demanding exclusive worship.
Could it be that Yahweh was once just one among many Anunnaki rulers, but later sought total control? Ancient texts hint at rivalries and power struggles among the Anunnaki on Earth. If Yahweh was originally a regional god, did he overthrow his brother gods, demanding worship alone?
In Exodus, Yahweh repeatedly warns against worshipping other gods, but never denies their existence, calling himself a jealous God, meaning competitive. The first commandment says, "You shall have no other gods before me."
The Bible talks about 70 nations in the ancient Near East, and Eastern traditions often mention a divine council of 70 gods. The Canaanites worshipped El and his 70 sons. The Egyptians had the Anunnaki, a council of gods overseeing creation. The Greeks had the Olympians, a group of ruling gods. In Hinduism, the Devas and Asuras divided the world.
What if all these different gods were actually the same Anunnaki rulers, just known by different names in different cultures? What if dividing the world among the gods wasn't just a myth, but a real historical event?
The Old Testament is full of stories about Yahweh fighting other gods, destroying their temples, punishing those who worshipped them. Baal, the Canaanite storm god, was overthrown. Marduk's influence faded after Babylon fell. Dagon, the Philistine god, was humiliated when his statue fell before the Ark of the Covenant.
But why did these powerful gods disappear one day? What if they didn't really disappear? What if a war broke out between Yahweh and the others? These gods weren't just spiritual beings, they were real. Did Yahweh wage war against other Anunnaki rulers? Did he wipe them out and rewrite history to make himself the only true God? If so, where did the other Anunnaki go? Did they abandon Earth?
If the Bible is a retelling of Mesopotamian myths, and if Yahweh was once just one of many Anunnaki rulers, then the question isn't just who they were, but what happened to them.
Humanity uses mysterious and powerful symbols that have lasted across vast spans of time and space. The same images show up over and over, carved in stone, painted in temples, woven into myths.
The winged disc, the pine cone, snake symbols, so strange, so specific, that seeing them across multiple civilizations seems more than coincidence. Who are the Anunnaki? Ancient aliens, fallen angels, multidimensional beings, a future version of humanity sent back to reshape the timeline, or something even stranger than we can imagine.
The Sumerian tablets describe them as gods from beyond the stars who shaped civilization itself. If these myths are true, can the symbols they left behind tell us more? Were these symbols a language, a secret code, a record of something we were meant to forget?
The winged disc, seen above temple gates and royal thrones held by gods hovering over ancient kings, is believed by some to represent divine authority and the presence of celestial beings overseeing humanity. Others suggest a more technical meaning. A symbol of flight, a vehicle, a chariot of the gods.
The pine cone held by towering figures in Mesopotamian carvings, hung as if granting wisdom, is seen as a symbol of consciousness, spiritual awakening, pineal gland activation, hidden knowledge right before our eyes.
The snake motif appears throughout the myths of every great civilization, from Sumer, linked to Enki, the god of wisdom, to Egypt, where it decorates the crowns of pharaohs, to Mesoamerica, taking the form of the feathered serpent in the skies worldwide. The snake embodies dualities, life and death, wisdom and deception, creation and destruction, from the cradle of civilization to the ruins of the forgotten ancient world.
These symbols are more than decoration. They're embedded in the foundations of ancient temples, hidden in the architecture of pyramids and ziggurats. They whisper of something bigger. Why do they persist? Are they remnants of a forgotten origin, a shared legacy passed down through civilizations? Or do they still hold meaning, a thread connecting us to prehistoric times before recorded history?
These symbols remain. Are they echoes of something buried long ago, or is there a reason they haven't faded away? An influence still working beneath the surface of our world? What are we really looking at? A forgotten history, a warning, a message left behind for those who want to see their symbols, their secrets? What do? They reveal. And most importantly, what are we still missing? The pine cone is an ancient and powerful symbol, used across civilizations for thousands of years. From Sumer to Egypt, from the Vatican to modern architecture. This image appears again and again, often linked to divine knowledge, spiritual enlightenment, and even control of consciousness. But where did it come from, and what does it really mean?
The pine cone symbol predates written history. The oldest known depictions appear in Mesopotamian art, where some figures have wings, others.
Subscribe to join us on this journey into forgotten history. Like, comment, and support our mission to reveal the truth behind